Ron here. Okay, we've worked up to lab 4, which is configuring passwords. So there are a couple different passwords that we'll be configuring on this. We'll primarily be working on router C, but we'll configure console port passwords, enable passwords, secret passwords, telnet passwords, and then we'll finish up with SSH. So quite a bit in this lab, so I'll try to move through it quickly. So here we go. The lab that I've written basically starts out just doing the enable and enable secret passwords. So we'll go ahead and configure that. Enable config T. Okay, so the difference between enable and enable secret is that by default the enable secret already is encrypted, and so we'll see that. And then also, if there is an enable secret, it's going to override whatever you put in for just the enable password. So start out enable. We'll do a question mark. So there's a couple different things. We're going to do password. So this is just the enable password, and we're just going to set the password to enable. Or we can put en. Let's do something simple. Enable. That way I can remember it. Alright. So we'll do an exit. We'll do a log out. Hit enter again. Okay, so we're prompted. Type in enable, and so we have to put it in a password. Enable. Not too bad. Not too difficult. One thing I do recommend is you do not write your changes until you've had a chance to log out and log back in, just to ensure that you didn't mistype something and now you've locked yourself out. So go back into config T. We'll do enable question mark. So now there's secret, and we'll just make this one. Let's do a question mark. So there's a couple different things. So when you see it in the running fig, it's probably going to be specified with enable secret. It'll have a 0, or it'll have a 5, and then some googly-gog. Well, that means that what followed it was the encrypted password. And the 5 typically, from my understanding, means MD5. So it's a hashing algorithm, so it cannot be reversed. Which is key, and we'll see later. So enable secret, we'll put this one as secret. Let's keep it simple again, you know. So end, log out. Alright, enable. So I'm going to try enable again. Okay, it didn't work, so I'm going to try secret. Alright, so it worked that time. So we see that the enable secret overrode the enable password. And of note, the enable password and the enable secret password cannot be the same. Alright, it's not going to allow you to put them both in there as the same. So let's do a show run. We'll do a bang include enable. So it's gonna basically search for any line that includes the name or the keyword enable. I'll hit enter. It should spit out the 2 that we put in. So enable secret 5, remember this is encrypted, and then this is the encrypted password. Alright, and again, from my understanding, this is a hash value. Enable, password, enable. So this is put in clear text. So if somebody gets a hold of your config, they can easily see, you know, what your password is. Obviously, since the enable secret overrode it, it's not that big of a deal, but still you don't want these floating out there. So what you can do, let's go config T. You can do service password. I'll hit the question mark. It's password encryption. I'm just going to hit tab. Alright, so we've turned on password encryption. Well, it doesn't really apply until you do a show run. So we'll do a do show run. Alright, notice now enable password 7 in this googly gog. So what this means, the 7 is a Cisco proprietary encryption algorithm. And from my understanding, I've used Cane Enable. It's a piece of software that allows you to crack passwords and all sorts of different things. You can take this and enter it into Cane Enable, or there's online tools that'll reverse engineer and you can get the password out of that. I'm not going to go through that, but again, this is a Cisco method. It can be broken. I tend to stick with the MD5s. It's a hash, so as it sits, this shouldn't be able to be reversed into its originating password. What happens is you enter the password, it runs it through the MD5 hash algorithm and says, does that hash value equal this value? And if it does, it allows you to get in. If it doesn't, you can't get in. But at no time is it taking this and reversing it into the original password and then comparing what you entered. It's always comparing the hash values. All right, so I'm going to hit escape. All right, so that was enable and enable secret. All right, so if we do, let's see, what do we want to do yet? Let's go line con 0. All right, so this is my console port, and I can specify a console port password. So we'll do password console. So I'm just setting the console port password as console. All right, and then I also have to specify login. All right, so I'm going to log out. I'm going to hit enter again. This time I'm prompted for a password. I'm not dropped right into user exec mode. I'm asked for a password. So I'm going to put console. Good. Enable. I'm going to put my secret password, assuming I could type. Alright. So that now we've done enable secret, and we've now specified a console port password. Fig T. So let's do Telnet. Line VTY. This is your virtual terminal interface. I did a question mark. Specify 0 through 15. So on this router, I have up to 15 ports that I can use, or that the router uses to enable incoming connections. So if I want to use all of those, which I typically do, I'm going to put a 0 space 15. So now I'm configuring for all of those ports. So I'm going to do a password Telnet. Now, here's a weird thing about Telnet. Let's do a no password. So it took it out. So let me bring up TerraTerm. I'm going to try to establish a Telnet connection. It says password. If you could see it, I know it went pretty quick. It says password required but not set. So Telnet was running, but because no password was set, it never allowed somebody to log in. So you can do a password Telnet. So now when we bring it up, I'll bring it down here. Telnet. Okay. And it brings up, asking for the password. So Telnet. Enable. Secret. Good to go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and log out. What happens if I specify no login? Well, this is a pretty insecure way to do. What this actually means is don't require a login password, but it allows people to get in. So what you can do, Telnet, okay, and bam, it just drops me right to the prompt. It didn't even ask for a password at all. So that's definitely not what you want to do. It's okay for the lab, but definitely not in a production environment. Enable secret config. Well, let's just do a logout. I'm going to do majority of my configurations from the console port. Okay, so we're going to specify login. All right, because that's what we want. I'm going to exit out. So now we've done enable secret. We've done a password on the console port, and we've done a password on the Telnet. Okay. Now what I want to show you is usernames. Okay. So instead of just having a password, now we can specify users. So now I can have multiple users logged in, and it helps me keep track of if a change is made, well, who made that change? Well, if people are logging in with their passwords, then I can look that information up. So I got username, and I'm going to do question mark, and it asks for username. So I'm going to go Cisco question mark. Typically, I like to do secret because, again, this is just like the enable secret, where it automatically gets encrypted, and it gets encrypted MD5 instead of the Cisco proprietary. All right. So I'm going to do secret. And now it's going to ask for, if you were copying from an old config, you could specify 5 and then the encrypted password. But because I'm typing it in here for the first time, I'm going to use the line. So it's just Cisco. This is my password. So username Cisco, secret Cisco. So not exactly what you would want to do in a production environment, but again, I need to remember all these as I'm typing them through this tutorial or this lab. So we'll do an end. Correction. If I log out, it's never going to prompt me for the password. What's going to happen is it's going to go back to the console password. So let's go back to config t, line con 0, and now we're going to do a login. If I do a question mark, look, we've got local and TACACS. So if I wanted to use a TACACS server, that's one thing. I'm not going to really cover that in this lab because I don't have a TACACS server running. But we're going to specify local. And what that's going to allow us to do is now it's going to look in its local data or its local configuration, and you need to specify a username that's in there. If you don't have a username in there, that's a good way, to kind of screw yourself, lock yourself out. But we're going to roll with it because we just created the username Cisco. So end, log out. So now when I hit enter, I'm prompted for a username Cisco, password Cisco, enable secret. All right. So we're getting further and further along, kind of customizing and making it a little bit more secure. Do a config T. All right. This time I'm going to take the username Cisco out. So no username Cisco. And now I want to talk about a little bit about this thing called privileges. Okay. So each user can be assigned a privilege number. All right, and those numbers can range from 0 to 15. Now, you can specify certain commands as only being allowed to be run if the person's at a specific level. Like, you can specify they can do a show run if they're privilege level 15. Now, I'm not going to go into how to specify all those different privilege levels and adding different commands to them, but I just want you to be aware that it is possible. You can get that granular in breaking it down. Privilege level 15 can do all of these commands. Privilege level 14 can do all of these commands, and vice versa. 0 being the least amount of things that they can do. 15, they're pretty much God on your router. So we'll do username Cisco. And if we do a question mark, you notice there's a privilege. So priv tab question mark 0 through 15. So we're going to make this guy God, which is, a lot of times what I do anyway. We're going to do a secret Cisco. All right, so we still have a username Cisco, password Cisco, but this time we specified a privilege of 15. So if we do an end, log out, we hit enter again, Cisco, notice this time that it dropped me to privileged exec mode. I don't have to enter the enable password anymore. So that's kind of a cool thing I typically do because I don't like having to enter the enable password each time. Now it might be a little bit more secure to force people to still have to enter that enable password, but that's up to you in your environment. All right. So now we've done enable secret. We've done passwords on the console port. We've done passwords on the Telnet port, and now we've even specified usernames. So we're going to do one extra step, which is SSH. Okay, SSH is secure shell. The drawback with Telnet is that it sends passwords in clear text. So if you're firing up Wireshark, or somehow you're tapping the line, and somebody sends out a Telnet connection, you can just read right in the packet what their username was, what they specified. So not a secure method. So SSH encrypts those passwords before it sends it. Okay. So what we're going to do is config T. Now, to enable SSH, there's a couple extra steps you have to do. You have to specify a domain name. So we could do IP domain. And if you look, there's IP domain TAC name. Oh, I didn't enter the actual name. So we're going to call this CiscoLab.net. Alright. Nothing technical, nothing crazy. And then we're going to do a crypto key generate RSA. Alright. Now, it's going to ask me if I want how many bits I want. So, the low number bits are less secure. The high number bits are more secure. In this case, I'm just going to accept the default to 512. Alright. Because it generates a whole lot faster than if I specify a larger key. So, it's now generated that key, and it enabled SSH 1.5. Now, I'm running an old version of an iOS, meaning my version can only run version 1 of SSH. One of my other routers is running an enterprise iOS, so I can specify version 2, which is typically what you want to do because it's a newer edition. It's better. I'm not going to go too deep because I'm not all that knowledgeable on the differences between SSH1 and SSH2. But I know SSH2 is the standard, so that's what you use when it's available. If I were running a newer iOS, it'd be IPSSH. Now, I don't have the command here, but it would be version 2. Alright, and I would be able to, it would start using version 2 instead of SSH 1.5. Alright, so now we need to tell. We've got keys, we've got usernames. Now we need to tell the router that when there's an incoming connection that you want to establish that with SSH, not Telnet. So we'll go line VTY 015 again. Alright, we're going to do transport input ? Now, I've got SSH in here. I've got a couple different options here. Now, from my understanding, you can specify multiple options on there, and if one fails, it'll roll to the next. So oftentimes what you'll see is SSH Telnet. Alright, so that means SSH is the primary. That's what it's always going to try to establish, but if it can't do it with SSH, it'll do it with Telnet. Alright, now we're going to do a login local again, so it uses a local account. And you have to do it this way if you're going to do it with SSH and all that. I've tried it without it, and it doesn't work because SSH is looking for that username and password. Alright, so we've now specified that we want to use SSH. We want to use a local account, so Cisco should work. So let me bring up my Terra term. Alright, so SSH is the default, but SSH2 is set. So in my case, because I'm running an old iOS, I have to specify SSH version 1. Alright, so I hit OK. Let me see if I can drag this down. What it does is it comes up and says, okay, we're gonna use a key and blah blah blah. Do I need to use this key? So I'm just gonna specify continue to use that key, and then another window comes up for a username and passphrase. So I'm gonna go Cisco, then I'm gonna hit OK, and bam, I'm right to privilege exec because I'm using that privilege 15. So I'm good to go. So that's establishing it with SSH. Now let me unplug from router C. I'm going to plug into router A. I'm going to close this out, log out, bam. Alright. Alright, so now I'm in router B. Enable. Now, when establishing a connection from one router to the next, you can do it two ways. You can do Telnet 192.168.0. I think we're talking about 6. Alright, so because I specified SSH space Telnet, it's going to accept either one. So I got Cisco. And again, this is sent in clear text, which is typically isn't what you want to do. So a lot of times you might just specify SSH, not SSH and Telnet. Now another way to establish Telnet connection is just to type the IP address 192.168.0.6, and the router interprets that as, oh, you're trying to access that, and it uses Telnet by default. So Cisco. I'm going to log out. Now, because there's no username on this router, if we do a show run bang include username, it shouldn't come up with anything. Alright, so it's looking, and it doesn't find anything. Alright, so there's no username specified. Well, that's a problem, because when I go to try to SSH in, you'll see what happens. SSH 192.168.0.6, no user specified nor available for SSH client. So SSH requires that username, to establish that connection. And because I don't have a username on this one, I'm going to have to specify it in the SSH command. So we'll do SSH question mark. Now notice here I've got a -L. This is the login name. So we're going to specify Cisco with that command. And then I also know on the other router that I'm running version 1. So I can also specify version 1. So let's do -L. Now it's looking for the login name. So Cisco. We'll do a -V, and we're going to specify version 1. Oops, I forgot the IP address. It's usually pretty important. And there we go. So it used username Cisco, and now I just have to enter the password Cisco if I could type. There we go. Now we're into router C. So there you go. Now we covered enable passwords, enable secrets, enable secret, overwrote the enable password. We turned on service password encryption. So now whenever you enter a new username or you enter a new password, it's going to automatically encrypt that. Now we can turn password encryption off, and it's not really going to do anything. But if we enter a new password at that point, it's not going to be encrypted. However, like I talked about before, when I do a username, I always do secret and the password. That way, even if password encryption is turned off, it's going to be encrypted because it's a secret password. And secondly, it's an MD5 hash, not Cisco's version or Cisco's encrypted password that can be broken. So then we covered putting passwords on console ports, which I don't typically do. I like to do login local. Then we did Telnet. You can do a Telnet password. I typically like to do login local again. And then we changed the VTY ports from Telnet to SSH. And in order to do SSH, we had to specify a username, which we did, Cisco. We have to do a domain name, which we called it ciscolab.net. You have to generate the keys, so we did a crypto key generate RSA, and in this instance, we just accepted the default 512. And then we tried to SSH from another router and had to specify the username and such. So I hope you found this informative. I know I rushed through it really fast. I didn't want the video to be too long, but I know there's a lot of good info, so if you got to watch it more than once, feel free. Also, just as I always ask, leave some comments, leave some tips. Share your knowledge, because how we all learn. So thanks, man.